Welcome, everybody. I'm Lisa Stenerson Kramer, and I'm here tonight with my husband, Scott Kramer, and this is the Devoted Dad podcast. So, Scott, honey, we've had some people give some really nice feedback about our first podcast, and one of the questions that came up was basically, what is this podcast kind of about? What's your intention around the podcast?
Well, I started off, wanting to do a podcast was to provide the resources to men, to fathers, because a few years ago, my daughters and I suffered a tragic loss in our family. My daughters lost their mother, and here I was as a newly widowed father to two teenage daughters, and really I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to handle the situation. And I found that there really wasn't a lot of resources out there for fathers and for men. And so I embarked on trying to write a book, sharing my experience as a widowed father, what we went through on the grieving process, how we were able to connect as a family, and how we were able to um, uh, be able to not only survive but thrive, to be able to move forward. And I'd like to share that with the world and with men in particular, to give them hope that they're not alone. So yeah, that's where it was born out of.
Awesome, honey. Thank you. And I think that that's a really good point, right? That um, at any point in any of our lives, we can become overwhelmed with a life situation. And for you and the girls, it was the death, right, of your wife, Debbie, and a sudden death, a totally unexpected death, and having to navigate a totally new reality. I know that you talk about in your book, there were the before moments and then the after moments. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Um, well, I called the moment when she passed away was the event. It was like the event horizon. It's like it's the anomaly on the edge of a black hole that you reach where it's too late. The gravitational pull is so great that it's too late, that you can't escape it. Not even light can escape it. In the event of when that moment happened, when she passed away, it was our event horizon. It was too great. We could not go back. There was no going back to the life before. And the new reality, everything else was broken into two sections in our life: before she passed away and after she passed away. And it was a clear partition in our life. It was very traumatizing. As many people know, she had taken her own life and left us uh, totally and completely stunned, horrified, terrified, and in unimaginable grief. And so so of something that we were not prepared for, and it was so overwhelming that it was incomprehensible in our imagination, or in our mind, right?
Yeah. And I think um, different people have these different moments in their life, right? Where, um, like you said, there is no going back. There's just no going back. And it can be deeply, deeply traumatizing, as you mentioned. And there's also usually a huge amount of fear involved. And I've just been thinking about fear lately myself, and I know that you've talked about it as well. And I just want to ask you, Scott, like, how do we deal with fear? Fear is a pretty commonplace experience, especially nowadays, right? A lot of Canadians are feeling, higher levels of fear and anxiety than ever. So, how do we deal with fear? What can we do? What can we do so that it doesn't completely consume us, because we do have to live? right? Sometimes when simultaneously dealing with huge amounts of fear.
Well, fear is a God-given emotion. We were given fear for a reason. We were supposed to have fear, to protect us, protect us against bears, snakes, spiders, sharks, muggers, keep us from dangerous situations, keep us from, you know, being reckless in life. So actually, fear, if you look at it, the totality of what fear is, it is something that is a gift, and it is to be used appropriately. But what we find is that many people, like one fellow said, that our character defects is the misuse of our God-given emotions. And fear is an emotion. It's a very powerful emotion. So fear, when misused, is can be very destructive. Create a lot of anxiety. It can create a lot of pain. And fear can also use a lot of other emotions, such as pride, grief. It can use anger. It can use guilt, shame. It can use all of these type of emotions and manifest itself through them to try to scoop up all the basic instincts of life, because it's afraid of missing out, afraid of not having enough, afraid of an unknown future.
Oh, that's a good one. Being afraid of an unknown future. Yeah, I think a lot of Canadians are feeling that right now. Mm.
Yeah. So when fear is used appropriately, fear can be a motivating emotion. It can motivate us to take action, right? So if you're confronted by a bear, well, I'm afraid of that bear, so I'm not going to go near that bear. I'm going to stay away. So that's a positive thing. So if you see that there is a frightening situation, it can help motivate you in a possible way to take action. Or when the sensation of fear comes up, then usually that alerts you to something in your life that needs the attention to take care of it and then to move on. So it's a valuable tool. It's a way to signal to you that something needs your attention and that you need to tend to it and you need to move on from it. But the way that God intended, the way that fear is in us, it's not supposed to be permanent. It's not supposed to be attached to us all the time, like living in a constant state of fear. Um, if fear is like laughter. I mentioned it in one of my Instagrams before that, if I sat here, like, if you think of a laugh, it's like, it comes and it goes, right? It's a sensation. It's a joy. Feels good. Tells you something's funny. So, but if I sat here and I laughed 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, I'd get thrown into the loony bin. I'd probably die from an ulcer or bursted belly or something like that, right?
Yeah. It just doesn't work. The body's not designed to maintain any kind of emotion endlessly, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of the same with fear. Fear is meant to warn us, tend to it, move on. It's supposed to be transient. It's supposed to be impermanent. It's not supposed to be attached to us 24/7, 365 days of the year. Because if you're in fear that much, that long, all the time, where do you think you're going to end up? In the psych ward, in the hospital, or dead. So it's very destructive to life to be so attached to your emotions, and especially fear.
Well, I know from my own experiences, I've had times in my life where, fear was a daily experience. It was. And sometimes for a good chunk of the day. And I know that there are a lot of people out there right now where, they know intellectually they shouldn't be in fear, for such a long period of time, but they're still really struggling to let it go. So what are some things that we can do to let go of the fear?
Hmm. Well, it is understanding how we work as human beings. That understanding that emotions and thoughts come from our mind, and understanding that a lot of our fears are a story we tell ourselves, and it is it's very very it's an illusion, because 99.999% of the time, person right here right now is in no danger. Usually, if you're listening to this podcast, usually you're sitting someplace warm, dry. You got a $1,500 phone in your hand, and you're probably drinking a coffee, probably well fed. In that moment, there's nothing chasing you. There's nothing threatening you. There's nothing going wrong. Usually, it's a state of being. It's a state of mind. It is a narrow focus on some unknown outcome. It's of some story that your mind has come up with to try to make sense of and predict the future. And which is most cases, 99% of the time, what you are afraid of never comes to pass, or it's not nearly as bad.
Yeah. I've always found that the things that really shatter your life, you never thought of. Those are the ones that you get blindsided by those things, right? So a lot of times the stuff that your mind just keeps endlessly thinking about, you know, is probably, like you say, never really going to come to pass.
Yeah. So I find that, on a daily basis, when it comes to fear, like, believe me, I've had incidences in our lives where I was terrified and horrified about circumstances in my life, and especially the loss of, my wife, and dealing, having surgery, and then COVID broke out, and there was all no income coming in, and it's just absolutely terrified, how I was going to get through these situations.
Yeah, because all the real estate shut down, right? After COVID for a while.
It shut down our income, and so so with fear, it's a state of mind, a state of being. It's the stories we tell about ourselves about an unknown future. So this unknown future that we keep living in, and this one possible outcome out of an infinite amount of outcomes, right, that we don't know. It's like trying to guess lottery numbers, and it this one possible income, that the one possible outcome that we're so narrowly focused on, um, never is going to happen. Most likely is not going to happen. It won't be as bad as it will be. So it's about being aware of your thoughts, aware of these thoughts and these emotions, and paying no mind to those thoughts.
So you talked earlier about things just being a sensation. And I know for me sometimes I would start thinking about something, maybe something economic or a relationship issue or something like that, right? And then shortly after the thoughts are coming up, then I'm starting to get the physical sensations in my body, right? The heart it's kind of starting to beat a little faster, tension in my muscles, that kind of thing. So once you get to that point, the physical body starts reacting, and then it kind of almost prompts you to worry even more, right? Because that's disconcerting. But what can I do to kind of break that loop then? When I start feeling the physical sensations, what can I do?
Well, the thing is that I found with fear is that yes, it is fear is fear, whether um, your body, your mind, and your spirit within you does not can't delineate the different types of fear. Fear is fear, right? Whether you're afraid of a spider or afraid of some economic insecurity, it doesn't matter. Fear is the same sensation. So what happens is that within us, a sensation will come up, and our minds will try to label it.
Yeah.
So, this feeling, this sensation is coming up. Oh, I label it as fear. And then all of a sudden your mind will go, well, what am I afraid of? Well, looking around, well, there's nothing to be afraid of. Then it'll start to make things up to be afraid of because it doesn't know what to be afraid of. So it'll start to label it as fear and then start to make stories around what that fear is. And all it is a machination of the mind. It's not even real. You're sitting in a living room warm with somebody you care for, and all of a sudden you have this sensation, you label it as fear, and then you come up with a story about what you're afraid of. If there's nothing real in form around you, it'll come up with a story, and it'll stay narrowly focused on and obsess over that label and that story it tells itself. So for me, as soon as I is to be mindful of that, is to be aware of that. So when these sensations come up in me, I recognize it as a sensation. I try not to label it, and I try not to create a story around it. And I tell myself that I'm subject to what I hold in mind, and I don't have to be subject to that.
Yes.
So that I can let it go. I can understand that these sensations are transient.
Yeah.
That sensation is trying to move through me
Yeah.
and out of me.
Yeah. Just like that laughter comes up, it bubbles up, it comes out, and then it's gone.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to label it and attach a story to it, then it's just being held on to. So I'm holding on to that sensation, which I've identified as fear and created a story around.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So it takes practice.
Yes.
It really does take practice to identify what these sensations are. Then a person can go into, where is that sensation coming from? Right? What kind of spirit are we holding within ourselves? What side of ourselves are we is coming up from within us? Right? The spirit within us, the energy within us is either good or positive or negative. Yeah, and we have positive or negative energies within us. There couldn't be one without the other. Sometimes we have a positive energy and sometimes we have a negative energy come up. So we need to be able to have enough awareness to discern which energy is coming up and producing that sensation. So what I try to do is to recognize from my awareness where I want to have focus my attention on, the positive or the negative.
So when that when that fear's coming up, right, and the mind is immediately trying to label it with something, some sort of problem. Okay, I'm feeling this because of this and that and da da da, whatever else. So we can remind ourselves that what, we're not subject to this, right? We're subject to what we hold in mind. I don't have to be subject to this. And then you can basically just acknowledge, I'm going to see this almost as a reverse laugh. I'm just going to see this um, as something that is like a laugh, and it's just going to pass through, and I'm not going to make a story about it. And it does pass, doesn't it?
It does.
The energy does pass.
So make no mistake, we're supposed to have fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not here to eliminate fear within us.
Yeah.
To eliminate fear is to eliminate life itself.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Right? Because we would not know joy if there was no fear. Fear is there to protect us. Fear is there to support us.
So can we even say thank you? If we have enough consciousness, we could even say, oh, we could say, okay, I'm feeling some sensations. Thank you, right? Just acknowledge, thank you. I am not subject to this.
Yeah. And just allow it to pass through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just and sometimes it takes, if you breathe, you tell yourself, I don't have to be subject to this sensation that's within me. Because I don't want to, whatever is going to come up, I'm not going to create, I don't want to be subject to whatever story I tell myself. So I'm going to let it pass. And I found that with all of the, like with grief or guilt and shame, and I recognize these sensations that come up in me. And I understand that they are transient and they're temporary and they're trying to pass through me. So I give them the space to pass through.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I give them the space to pass through, and I welcome it. I breathe it out. I take a moment. I breathe it out. And usually for a while when I first started using this technique, it would be about 15, 20 minutes and it's gone. I'm thinking about moose, or something like that, right? Or for fishing, I mean, I wasn't thinking. But 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 now it's only a matter of minutes.
Right. And that's the beauty of the practice, right?
Is to practice that.
Yeah.
And to understand, it's just like, all of the wonderful, beautiful feelings of joy, love, happiness, um, compassion, bliss, those types of things, those feelings, you're not supposed to feel those all the time as well.
Yeah. And we have to be fair, right? In a human life, we can't just welcome the one type of sensations and say, oh, no, those other type of sensations shouldn't be there. The reality is all of it is part of life, right? So it's a matter of basically, in a way, being inclusive of all sensation.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. 100%.
So it's a matter of, so nowadays in today's society, we're inundated by fear. Like fear of missing out, fear of the other, fear of what's going to come next, fear of some unknown future. Fear, 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 fear. We see that in politics. We see that in marketing. We see it in advertising. We see it in movies. We see it everywhere. So it's meant, because fear is a very stimulating and very motivating and easy to access type of emotion.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Right? And so that's why a lot of politics are all fear-based. That's why marketing, selling products is the fear of missing out. We got 80% sold. It'll be gone tomorrow. Don't miss out on this one. It's like, it's fear, 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 fear. And that we're surrounded by fear. You go on YouTube and you watch all of these political podcasts and you watch a lot of these things. It's all so angry and full of fear. It's like the world is going to blow up next week. Is that true? I don't know. But right here, right now, it's okay. Or your economy is going to collapse and everybody's going to be living on the street. And is that true?
Yeah.
I don't know. But right here, right now, we're okay.
That's right. And even if for some bizarre reason it was going to totally collapse, wouldn't you want to at least enjoy this moment now? Right? So rather than getting, so involved in the story, which is just really one of many possible stories that you could be buying into, just getting present in the moment with that actual sensation is what will set it free from your system, right? And yeah, and I think, for a lot of us Canadians right now, sometimes we read things on the news, or we hear stories from friends and family about stuff that's going on, and it does feel really overwhelming. But you know what? We don't have to let it just kind of ruin our day, and just totally ruin, kind of the, like you say, that piece of the present moment. Yes, we might get triggered. Yes, we might have to process it. But if we don't go into labeling and we just let it be felt out, then we can move past that. And you've experienced that many times, right? In your healing journey.
If, let's say, I knew I had 5 years left to live, I was
Yeah.
going to die. I know I'm going to die December 4th, 2029, and
Yeah.
and that's how I'm going to die. So am I going to live the next 5 years worrying and freaking out about that 5 years from now? Or am I going to just say, oh shit, okay, I'm going to get out there and enjoy life. I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to go camping, I'm going to go see the pyramids, I'm going to travel, I'm going to, and, you and get out there and really enjoy and live life. Am I going to be more connected to my wife, to my children, to get as much time in there? Am I going to detach from the phones and from videos and from all the negativity that's out there? Or am I going to get out there and try to experience the beauty of life? Right? So why would I now, why would I be worried about some unknown outcome or some possible outcome and be sitting there worried about it, and it may never even freaking happen?
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't I just, rather than say, what, that could happen down the road, I don't know, it's one of many billions of outcomes. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy my wife, my children, the outdoors, fishing, camping, doing all those types of things, enjoying concerts, plays, going out for a walk around Lafarge Lake, with my dog, and really connecting and developing relationships with people that we love, because that's what life is. Our minds and the world wants us to stay distracted through fear of some unknown future, rather than just being present in the moment and then just enjoying life, and yeah, it's just because, what, at my age, when you start to learn that, life isn't infinite. You have a finite amount of it, and it's time to really start to, really look at what's really important in your life and start to enjoy it. But anyways, yeah.
Thank you, honey. I hear you and I agree. And for those of you that joined us today for our conversation, all of us are feeling fear right now. We are, to different levels and to different amounts. And we're not bad for that. Like Scott was saying, that's a part of being human, right? But we also have a choice as to how much we're going to indulge in the story around fear. When we allow ourselves just to feel the sensations out, it'll be amazing really to see how it truly does pass. Like a laugh, right? It really can pass. It'll take some practice, but it's worth doing, guys, because in these times, I don't think we're going to see a shortage of stuff that's going to be triggering. There's going to be plenty of that out there. So we've got to be kind of the gatekeepers on it, right? We've got to be the gatekeepers, and we've got to stop resisting fear and start embracing the sensation and then letting it go.
Yeah, all I can say is just remember, a lot of this stuff that's online and on TV is designed to make you afraid, because it's a motivating emotion for you to go out and buy their crap and to stay tuned to their channel, fixated to their channels, so they can sell you stuff. So you buy their stuff, give them your money. So it's a scam based on fear. So just be aware of that and see how destructive living in that bubble of fear is. And we can say no to that. We can choose we can choose to use the same platforms to look at more positive things. Like one thing that I like doing is looking at restoration videos. They're like awesome on how to rebuilding a motorbike, or that's positive. I like listening to some of the great speakers of the past, like Alan Watts or Krishnamurti, and getting motivated that way, or some motivational speakers. But these negative podcasts and political podcasts, you can choose to switch and choose the light, something that's more positive, or use it to educate yourself on how to build relationships and be more present in with your family, like going on our podcast. But but anyways, I digress. I'll let you wrap it up there, sweetheart.
I think just at the end of the day, guys, don't feel that you're alone. We're all experiencing fear right now. But there are certain ways that are going to be easier on you, right? And we really believe in, processing out the sensation, separating it from the story, letting the sensation go, and really just imagining it like a laugh. Just let it be a laugh and let it leave. So, anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.
Stay devoted, my friends. Devoted Dad.